Yeah, I would say a little bit of both. Looking back, I had learned a lot more about cutting at that point, but I definitely wasn't in the shape of what I am now. But even with nutritionists helping me, it's just too small for my friend. Like, I can't imagine getting to 115 now. 125 is already miserable for me. But to be honest, I weighed about 5 pounds less at that time, at least muscularly. I was a little bit heavier set at what I would walk around at now. And but I was also 19 years old. I just got done being 18, and people know how you develop over time. And I was just gaining more and more muscle, getting more mature in how I was built. And at 18, I cut to 118 one time, and I had starved myself, but I didn't know how to do it right. I literally didn't eat for a week. And when I say that, I mean, I literally probably had a piece of broccoli and Tic Tacs for like a whole week. And people will be like, bullshit. I'm like, no, I did it. It was stupid, but I did it. And I made weight, and I was thirsty and I was hungry and I didn't know how the hell I was doing it, but I made it. And I luckily ended it in like 2 minutes because I was so tired. I remember thinking I couldn't go to a second round that was even a 3 minute round. And when I went pro, the reason I tried 115 was because the UFC only had 115 at the time. And in my head, that was my dream. I didn't really give a shit about Invicta at the time. I didn't give a crap about anything else. My goal was the UFC. And if that's where I was going to be, I was going to work my way up the 115-pound chain. Um, then my dad and I, my team and I sat down and talked about it. It just wasn't smart. Like, wait until I was a little older, until I had a little more experience and a nutritionist to help me if that was going to be the goal. Then, God willing, there was a 125-pound division entered the ring because I'm too short, honestly, for 135. I've fought at 135 once before. I feel strong, but the girls are huge compared to me. And 115 is just, I just die. I literally went into shock the last time I tried to do it, and that's why we ended. That's also why I weighed so far over the limit. I didn't actually cut to that. I cut below that, but I had gotten into the bath or whatever, and my heart like basically passed me out, and I was having pretty much a heart attack and went into shock. And my dad pulled me out, and we were like giving me water and like everything else, trying to get me back to being alive. And it was very scary. We didn't call like the actual medical people because they would have canceled the fight, and I begged them not to. So basically, I promised my dad 115 would never be an option again until I like got my nutritionist and was for sure I'd make it because it was just too scary, too messed up for my body. I, of course, went in there and won both my fights at 115, my pro debut and my second fight. But it just wasn't a smart decision. I feel at home at flyweight, and I don't think I'll ever change.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say like, so you really do feel at home now at the flyweight weight, right? Like,
100%. In fact, I feel like one of the bigger people at 125, significantly, at least in my physicality. I may not walk around heavier than some of these girls, but a lot of these girls get out of shape. I tell people, even inside, outside fight camp, even when I'm a fatty, my version of being a fatty, I'm within 5 pounds of what I would normally walk around at in fight camp weight. And every time I have a UFC fight, I get better and better at maintaining that walk around weight.
no, because it's kind of crazy. Like I always find, and especially early in people's careers, they always try to cut as much weight as possible, right? And I think it is also, as you say, like the fear of getting hit, and then you're like, well, if I'm gonna get hit, I'd rather get hit by someone smaller than someone larger, and people always push themselves down as far as possible, not realizing that it really then affects your end performance. As you said, after 2 minutes, you were absolutely cactus. I always look at our champion, or was champion, Robert Whitaker, right? Like he was originally at 170, didn't have the greatest success, moved up, had a lot of success. Kiesa's another one. And I just always find that people are, and it's talked about like when you look at a lot of forums, like you have a lot of people asking like, what are the advantages of cutting weight, and then obviously people talk about being the bigger person in the ring. But I feel like there's like a tipping scale, right? And it's kind of like, yes, it can give you a little bit of an advantage, but if you take it too far, it just slingshots the other way, and it's actually a real disadvantage.
Absolutely. The problem with weight cutting is there's no real solution as to ending that. I've thought about that. I've talked about it. I've been involved in like research with it and stuff. Uh, or people have asked me to be a part of their research for it. The problem is, people are like, just have it day of. Do you know how bad that would hurt the entertainment industry? or
It would
like
be
right
terrible
before.
too because in my sorry to cut you off, but in my eyes, it would be terrible for the simple fact that it depends how you cut and weight too. If it's a dieting thing, that's one thing, but a lot of these guys are drawing out water, right? And you do that, and you don't give that person that 24 hours to really rehydrate,
Yeah,
and then you get hit in
yeah,
the
and they're
head,
still gonna, right.
right?
And they're still gonna hydrate the same amount. They're gonna be like, "Oh, I'm still cutting," even if it's same day. And you see that in wrestling even, that's a smaller scale, but they do the same thing. The difference is they have a 6-minute match and get breaks in between the eat and drink. We do not, it's go in their life or death kind of thing. And then they have the thing where it's like, well, step on the scale as you go into the cage. Yes, I think that would solve the problem of the weight cutting. No, it would not help the whole fans. And what are they going to do? Cancel the fight right then and there because you didn't make weight? They can't. It's not possible. They can't do that. Fine you. Everybody would just get fined. I would take a fine, and if I could weigh in 10 pounds overweight and still walk into the cage and fight somebody,
See,
like that's not fair.
I think the smartest thing that I've kind of heard was when they were talking about doing kind of like was what you started to do with the drugs, but like you do, random weight tests, right? So like while you're in mid camp at the start of camp, and then you basically say, okay, this is your walk around weight. You can only drop X% of that walk around weight. So in other words, if you're wanting to cheat the system, it means you're going to have to remain light the whole time, right? And people are going to get jack of that real quick. That's the only way. But once again, that comes at a cost, right? Like when you think about how much they have to pay USADA to do all these random drug tests, because you're paying for someone to randomly turn up and do these tests. There's a massive cost associated with that. I guess the reason it's on the mind again is obviously what happened last week. I
Yeah,
forgot what her name was, but she jumped
Julia. Yeah, Julia Vila was fighting her though. Yeah, I saw that.
right.
I don't even know from looking at her, and this is kind of judgy from a book cover kind of thing, but also listening to her video and knowing who she is, seeing what she's looked like previously, because I knew her through Invicta. She was the 135-pound champ there. Um, she wasn't. I don't think she was that cut. I don't think she cut that much weight. I think it was because of the timeline that she did it in, and she kind of explained that in her video. And I'd say she's right. Cut too much too fast, pretty much, and did it too soon. Did it too soon and then was super dehydrated for hours. I've seen it that way, and I've also seen it where they cut right before they go onto the scale, and then their body hasn't even recouped from this heat, because usually people do baths for that last part, and your body temperature gets so far up that if you even stand up or move out of the bath, you're basically passing out. Well, if you're sitting in a chair waiting for the commission to call you up, which is how it worked for me, at least in Vegas, you get up real quick and run onto a stage like you're already dizzy or lightheaded on a normal day for a normal person sitting up and standing up real quick. But to go from dehydration of 10, 12 pounds to get up, stand up, and go walk on a scale, it happens. And honestly, like this sounds terrible, but had it not happened in the public in front of a bunch of cameras, they would have told her to stand right back up and get on that scale and she would have been fine.
Well, I was just
It's
about to bring
just,
that up. They kind of did though, because when she fell over, they surrounded her, but she got up a second time and went on the scale a second time and fell again. Like that, I was actually just going to bring that up. I'm like that's the thing that really amazed me was the fact that it's like you're gonna get her to weigh in after she's just collapsed. Like I found that a little weird. But then obviously
uh,
after she collapsed the second time, it was done.
Well, I think it's disturbing to viewers. That's the problem. That's the only reason they even canceled the fight. It happens all the time. I've passed out in the bed. Like, they literally don't care as long as you aren't on camera when you do it. And I don't want that to sound bad to the UFC or whatever. I'm saying every promotion, like, it's a normal thing. We all do it. We pass out, we fall over, we're having to get carried. My dad carries me everywhere once I've cut weight, or at least used to. Now I'm good enough at cutting weight that it's not that hard on my body. I know how to do it properly. But when I was in Invicta, there's numerous times where my dad would just carry my lifeless body to the scale, and just lay me down. And when they would call my name, he'd have to help stand me up, and I'd be holding his arm and have to let go of him for 5 seconds. Like it's normal for us to all pass out, but because it was in public and people saw it, boom, she's out. She was fine by the next day. She said that, and she probably was. Your cardio probably isn't as great. That's the difference. But that's the dangers of weight cutting. It is a dangerous game with that. I hate it. because one, I still have a lot of weight to cut from most girls, and I hold enough muscle on my body that I'm able to cut a lot more weight than most girls, which sucks on one hand and is good on another, I guess.